Candice, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is always so fun. I'm looking forward to it.
I love chatting to you. I remember the first time we had a chat, we caught up at a cafe and it lasted hours. That was back when you had one book, Hades, and you just released your second book. And since then, it's gone nuts. Your career has gone nuts. You have written so many books. You've had collaborations with James Patterson. And the reason that we're talking to you today is that Crimson Lake, your novel Crimson Lake, which has just been re-released by the publishers under Troppo, because the television series Troppo has just been released. So much to unpack here, so much for me to discuss. Yeah. And I have to say, I've watched episode 1, absolutely hooked, absolutely love it.
Great.
Everyone, you need to go and watch it, and you need to read Crimson Lake or Troppo, as it's also called. So just to so that in case there's some new listeners,
okay,
and new people to the world of Candice Fox, although they must have been living under a rock. Crimson Lake, I want to. It's almost like I want to go through the journey of Crimson Lake. So tell us what Crimson Lake is about, in case people haven't read it.
Well, essentially, what I was trying to do is present you with two investigators of a crime. Both of them have been accused of their own terrible crimes. One of them is guilty, and they're working on something together. So really, it's 3 crimes for the price of one.
Yes.
So Ted Concaffey has been accused of the horrific abduction of a teenage girl in Sydney, in his hometown. He flees to Cairns, where he meets Amanda Farrell, the eccentric, undefinable Amanda Farrell. Amanda fully admits that when she was 17, she murdered a school friend. And as you're moving along in the story, it's starting to look more and more like Ted did his crime and less like Amanda did hers. And it's down to the last page before you find out who's actually guilty. They're working together on the case of in the book, it's the case of a missing author who's gone missing from this local town. He walked out in the middle of the night. His wife and son never saw him again. It's different in the TV series.
Yes, we'll talk about some of the differences when we get to that. Let's just start with the book. So, I think that, and it's interesting because I want to talk about the adaptation to the television series as well. But with Crimson Lake, that's, as you say, it's like 3 crimes for the price of one. There's these really interesting characters. How did this idea form? Because you don't live in Cairns. Yeah. You're not a murderer or even a suspected one. So how did this idea form?
It came together in a few different ways. At the time, we were having a kind of a pre-Me Too movement in Australia, where these sort of celebrities or B-grade celebrities or public figures were being accused of terrible crimes. We had Robert Hughes and Rolf Harris in quick succession. And I was startled by these terrible accusations, but also by the comments of people around me before there were any kind of trials or anything like that. The accusations came out and people were saying, oh, you can tell he's done it because he's that kind of guy. He just looks like that kind of guy. And I'm thinking that's a really dangerous kind of way to think, because you're sort of saying that sex offenders or people like that have a particular look and behavior, and that's just dangerous, because as someone who, I have a child now, you can't be thinking, oh, there's a predator. You can tell it's really obvious. You've got to keep your mind open. So there was that. And I just thought to myself, where would I flee if I was accused of a terrible crime? If I was in that situation and my entire world had fallen apart, where would I go? And I have spent some time in Cairns in my life, and it's just sort of wild. And the sinister nature of that end of Australia is less obvious than it is in Sydney. You know, you're in Sydney, you're like, where's the danger? It's right there on the street corner. It's in that suburb. It's in that street. It's very, very obvious. Whereas when I spent time in Cairns, you know, you see signs everywhere, crocodiles, beware, crocodiles, fatalities, don't swim here, it's all dangerous. But everything just looks beautiful. You don't see any crocodiles. You don't see, you know, it's all beneath the surface. And I found that mysterious and intriguing, and I sort of thought, I go to a place sometimes, I get a sense, you know, Los Angeles was the same. You go there and you think, I want to write about this place. This is my place, you know.
Okay, so one thing that you do have a lot of experience in, unlike, you know, killing and being accused of terrible crimes, is being an author. And there is a character, a very important character in the book, who is an author and who gets fan mail.
Yes.
Interesting fan mail, which, you know, is the letters are in the novel. And you can really get a sense of the fan who is somebody who is, you know, really into the author, who goes and sees the author at events and things like that, knows about the author's personal life, and wants to essentially be the author, wants to be published as well, and really trying to get this is not a spoiler, by the way, everyone. It wants to really, you know, get the author to help advice on how to be published. Have you experienced that from certain fans?
I have experienced, I won't say every kind of fan that there is, because I'm sure there's one that will surprise me. But I have experienced every type, from the, you know, the ones that I feel bad for those readers who write to me and they just want to be my friend. And I'm like, you know, I can see that you're a great person and that we probably really would be friends, but there are so many of you that I couldn't possibly be friends with, all the people who want to be friends with me, and aspiring authors who are very frustrated and angry, and they're trying to get published, and they're just, you know, knocking on doors, and they knock on my door, and I understand that, all the way up to, you know, I did 21 years for murder and I didn't really do it, and the police say I chopped my girlfriend up with a chainsaw and hid her under the M5, so do you want to talk about it? Here's my number. To, I've had people write and say, I really know who killed this person in this unsolved crime. Here's my email address. I'll tell you what happened. That's happened a bunch of times. Murder tips and
murder tips. What do you mean murder tips?
Oh, just people write to me and they say, oh, Candice, I read your book or I heard you on the radio. And one guy said, you seem like a very genuine person and I have this information and the police won't listen to me. Can I tell you? And I'm like, well, I guess. You know, that's happened a few times.
Okay, on that, because I know I've had many conversations with you and about your curiosity for all things criminal and serial killers and murder and stuff like that. So I want to know if you respond and start conversations with these people.
I do. If it's a murderer or an accused murderer, or you know, or I was accused of this or that, I don't tend to get involved, because really they just want me to tell their story, and I'm not a true crime writer, and you know, my next 3 books are all contracted. They're all, you know, so we'd be talking about years from now anyway, and blah, blah, blah. It's not really what I do. But when it comes to, oh, I have a tip on this murder and no one will listen to me, or I don't know what to do with it, well, I know homicide detectives and I know journalists, and so I'm kind of in the middle where I can take that and say, oh, hey, you know, I'll speak to someone and say, hey, can you do something with this, or can you do something with this? You know, I don't. There was one that was given to me about a cold case, a famous cold case. I won't say what it was, but the guy said, I have this tip, I had this clue, I think it's a clue, and I don't know what to do with it. And so he gave it to me, and then I had it. And I was like, well, I don't want to, like, what if it's, like, what if it's true? And the buck sort of stopped with me. And he, you know, kind of said, well, I told someone about it and then they had it and it never went any further. And then, you know, 20 years passed. You hear about this stuff, 20 years passed and nothing happened. So I didn't want that to be me. So I was quite desperate to get rid of it, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there are other varieties of fans that are, you know, they're just creepy men and creepy women, and you know, who just want to dirty chat with me or something. I get every variety.
I'm not actually surprised. But anyway, so Crimson Lake does really well. Tell us about when you got the news or when you started the discussion that it was going to be filmed for television.
Oh, yeah, it was years ago. I was just reaching the point in my career where producers were starting to speak to me about what I was writing now, because producers will try to get in as early as they can and snap your work up before it hits shelves in case it's massive, you know. So people were saying to me, what are you writing right now, you know? And so Crimson Lake was actually bought for television before it was finished. And
wow.
I was like, you guys don't even know how it ends. You don't know who's guilty, Ted or Amanda, you know. So, and they were like, we don't care.
Yeah. But had they read the first part of it?
Yeah. They'd read, I think they'd read like 30,000 words or something.
Okay.
So this was, I think, 2015. And yeah, I was happy to sell those rights. And I was thinking the way that most authors who option their books think, oh, well, it'll be on screens by next year. You know, and sometimes that happens, mostly not. And you know, the average, so what happens is usually it happens in 2 or 3 years, or it happens in 7 or 8 or 10 years, you know, or it never happens. I had a TV and film agent at the time, and he said that there was a book that he had been trying to get up for 20 years, and he's like, one day it'll happen, you know. And you know, 99% of things that are screenplays and books that are optioned never hit the screen, and that's not a made up statistic. That's actually like 99% of them. Yeah. So over the 7 years or whatever it has been between when it was optioned and now, there's been a lot of lunch meetings and a lot of you know, just speculation, like what do you think of this actor, and what do you think of that actor, and this person's interested.
So that's with the production company.
Yeah, the production company.
So tell us about those lunch meetings and what sorts of things get discussed, and did it always look like it was going to be a happening thing, or did at any point you think, oh, I might going to be one of the 99%? You know, how did it unfold?
You know what, I did not believe that it was actually going to happen until I said to them, I said to my family and my friends, I will believe it when Thomas Jane's feet are on the ground in Australia.
So Thomas Jane is Ted Concafe's the star of the show, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the time it's, you know, it's like, oh, we have a distributor, you know, and you go, okay, yeah, all right, that's great news, but I don't believe that it's ever going to happen. You know, and they say, oh, we have someone locked into the role, and you go, oh, well, that's great news, but there's so much that has to come together.
Yes, so much.
And then they said, yes, we've cast Thomas Jane, and yes, we've cast Nicole Shamoon, and we're looking at different locations in Queensland. And I don't know, I just kind of held it back, like I just didn't believe. And then I was.
So you just politely had these lunches and.
Oh yeah, I was just like, oh, that all sounds great. And then you go home and you don't hear anything for like, you know, 6 months. And then it's hard to maintain the belief. Yes. And then I was talking to his producer, and she said, TJ has left here. He has left Los Angeles. And then she texted me, you know, hours later, and she said, he's there. He's in Australia. And I said, well, do you have photos?
You didn't believe her?
No, because I don't know. The last thing I really believed, you know, was that I was going to get published one day, you know, and that happened. And it didn't feel safe to hope for anything after that, so once I had my one book contract in Australia for Hades, I was like, I hoped so hard since I was a kid that was going to happen. And then it did. It didn't seem fair or safe to hope for like your own TV show.
Yes.
And Thomas Jane is someone who's kind of been special in my life, really. Like, I mean, he's been around in my life. There was this movie that I kind of got obsessed with when I was 15. It was called Crow, City of Angels.
Oh, yeah.
And he was in that. And I got so obsessed with that movie that I wore out the VHS. Like, I broke the movie. I played it that much. And then I tried to get in the movie. She's got these wings on her back, like a big back tattoo. And I tried to get that tattoo when I was like 17. I walked into this tattoo shop that was obviously run by bikers. There were terrifying men in there, but once I'd opened the door, I wasn't game to turn around and just go straight back out. And so I went in there and I was like, I would like to get this full back tattoo on me. I have a letter from my parents saying it's okay. And the guy, this big grizzly biker, he just looked at the tattoo and he looked at me and he went, nope. And I went, okay, well, that's okay. That's fine. I'm just gonna run away now as fast as I can. Okay, bye. And so anyway, Thomas Jane was in that movie.
Hang on. So was Thomas Jane a suggestion of yours to be in this show? Because that's
no. They had thrown a bunch of names at me. I won't name any of them, just because I may work with those actors at one point, and I don't want them to be like, hey, you passed on me or I passed on you or whatever. But this is what they would do. They would say, oh, what do you think about this actor? And I'd go, oh my God, I love him. He would be amazing for Ted. Wow, that's great. And then I'd spend a week watching everything that actor has ever brought out. And then they'd go, oh no, he passed. Or oh no, he wanted to do it, but he got cast on something very similar or whatever. So they said, oh, we're looking at Thomas Jane. And I was like, oh my God, wouldn't that be amazing? And I thought back at all Thomas Jane movies I've ever watched and loved, and like Deep Blue Sea, I must have seen 100 million times, and Original Sin. And I was like, I know Thomas Jane. Oh my God, that would be amazing. But I just kind of went, oh yeah.
Wow, meant to be. So before we get more into the casting, because it's so interesting, the development of the script, because there are some differences, and I absolutely recommend that people not only read the book if they haven't already, because that's a experience in itself, but also watch the show. And I think it's really interesting to note some of the differences. So tell us about some of the steps in the script development and how involved were you in this process?
Yeah, people say to me, oh, Candice, are you nervous? It's your baby. What if they mess it up? What if it's not exactly the same and all this, and all these people are touching your baby? And I like the baby analogy because I have actually had a baby. And so many people have come into my life and influenced her and taught her things and changed her. And she says stuff sometimes and I go, where did that come from? That's hilarious. Like, who taught her that? So with Crimson Lake / Troppo, I was totally happy for that to happen, because all these different people have added really interesting stuff to it, and they've all made different decisions, and it's now its own work of art. And I think about how incredibly boring it would be if I just wrote the script based on my own novel and I didn't let anyone change it in any way, and I decided who all the actors would be and I had like total control. I think that would be incredibly boring. It's like little things along the way, like Thomas Jane texting me and saying, what kind of car do you think Ted would drive? And just an amazing experience of me going, well, I don't know, what kind of car do you think he would drive? And us having a little, and me giving over I don't know, like permission is too strong a word, but me saying, hey, I invite you to add what you want to that character, and him going, oh, I think this, you know. And then Yolanda, who's the head writer on it, and the writer's room, you know, when writers' rooms were happening, they would email me and say, we're kind of stuck on this. Like, why would Ted do this? You know, and I'd explain why the character did that, you know, and how he felt, and then they've got to represent it on screen. So yeah, I've had a little bit of involvement, but I was very happy to just sit back. And there's also, I've never wanted to be an author who's precious, and I demand this and I demand that, and so I really wanted to stand back and sort of say, I don't demand anything of you with this. I mean, if they'd said to me, oh great, we're turning Tom, you know, we're turning Ted Concaffey into an elephant and it's going to be set on the moon, I'd be like, well, that's, you know, I'm a little bit upset about that. But once I understood that they got the themes,
yes,
it's like, well, you understand, you get it, you know. I know.
Well, they obviously got the characters as well, because they did a great job, right? But when you saw that script and you could identify, obviously, the differences, what was your reaction? And in some of the cases, the differences are minor, and some are bigger. So number one, what was your reaction? And number two, did sometimes you go, oh, I see why they did that?
Yeah. Definitely, because I feel lucky as a novelist, because I've got 80,000, 90,000 words to tell you about this person, whereas sometimes they've got 30 seconds to demonstrate how Ted feels, you know, about his wife changing their daughter's name without telling him, you know. And you've got, one person's got to write that into the script, how he reacts, put words to it and actions, and then Thomas Jane's got to do it with his body and his face, you know. And there are all these wonderful decisions that have to be made. So I really love that. And then also things like Damford, the character in the book, he was very, I feel like he's not very complex. I wasn't very good at, I mean, this is me bagging myself out, which I shouldn't do, but, you know, I felt like my villains were very villainous, you know, in my first couple of books. You know, Crimson Lake is my fourth solo book. But coming to Troppo and watching Damford and reading the script, he's so complex. He has like a whole family. He has his own personal motivations. He's, you know, I'm inside his house, and what is his, I never thought about what Damford's house looked like when I wrote the book, because you never see him in it, so I didn't worry about it, you know. But they've put him in that house, so they've had to make a whole bunch of decisions about how clean is he, how neat is he, how you know, how does he do this, how did he do that? So yeah.
So when was production, and did you go to set and meet everyone and so on?
Oh my God! So I was locked down in Sydney for the entire filming.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and New South Wales opened up like 10 days after TJ flew home.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I was devastated. I was crushed. And I was crushed in a way that I couldn't possibly whinge about, because how do you go around whinging to your author friends like, I couldn't go to the set of my TV show and I missed out, you know, like it's nothing to whinge about, but also, so you just stuff a pillow on your face and you go, good.
So could you join in via Zoom or FaceTime or anything like that?
No, a lot of the time it was night shoots as well.
Oh yeah.
A lot of, you know, and that kind of thing. And they were just busy too. They had 65 days of filming, you know, and that's all. They did it fast, you know, and so I didn't want to get in there and be like, hey, can you spend an hour with me, just, you know, showing me around the set with a laptop or something. I didn't want to impose. So yeah, so I missed out on that, and I missed out on the after party and all that kind of thing. But Yeah, I'll make it up somehow. The nicest thing about it is I was watching the days count down to the announcement of them opening up, New South Wales and all this kind of thing. And I slowly realised over the coming days that I wasn't going to make it, and I was telling, and people were saying, you're going to make it, you're going to be able, and I was saying, no, I'm not going to make it. They're going to be finished by then. And my husband, without a shred of irony or joking or anything, he, in full seriousness, he said to me, babe, you'll have other TV shows. And I was like, that's so nice. Like, he's like in full belief.
Like, but it's so true, right? Like how many Jack Reachers are there? It's absolutely true. And I think, particularly with this production company, what they have nailed, apart from the themes, obviously, is the characters of Ted Concaffey and Amanda Farrell. So the casting of Thomas Jane and Nicole Shamoon, they are exactly what I had in my head.
Oh, really? Great.
Absolutely. Great. Absolutely. I mean, the American part, slightly different, but, Nicole as Amanda, oh my God, exactly what and I'm so glad that they were true to, visually what I had imagined. Yeah, the thing with your writing is, and this is what I've been trying to break down and analyze, Candice, is that
tortured.
No, it's a pleasure.
No, good.
And I will break it down one day because it's just what I do. Is that even in a few short sentences of dialogue, that is, bang, this character is alive on the page.
Oh,
even without that much description. You do description, of course, but it's the dialogue that suddenly I can see Sam, I can see, whoever, right?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to unpack from you what you do with that. How that character, and how, because the dialogue is very distinctive. You know who's talking, because sometimes there's no speech tags or whatever, who's talking. So what do you do? And from a craft point of view, can you kind of explain that a bit?
Yeah, somebody said to me at some point, or I read somewhere, I don't know, you're supposed to be able to just have the dialogue on the page and say, I know who that is, I know who that is, I know who. Everyone talks the way they talk. And I've always loved dialogue. I've loved listening to people. And one of my catchphrases, when I'm talking, listening, having a conversation, I say, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that. Just the way that somebody talks. So I just love language, and I love listening to people. And I am someone, I come from a bit of a scrappy background, like working class. We didn't have a lot of money. Western suburbs of Sydney. My mum fostered a bunch of kids while I was growing up. There were cops, there were criminals, there were, my dad was working in prisons. So I grew up with that kind of language, and then I've been in and out of different situations and had to fake it till I make it. I was teaching at university at a prestigious Sydney University at one point, and trying to tone down my swearing and the twang and trying to keep up with what the hell are these people even saying, because their words are so complex and the way they talk. So I've always paid attention to language. But yeah, how do you do it on a page is you just boil it down like you're reducing a sauce, and you write it. You write a conversation between two characters, and then I go back and I go, no, that's unnecessary. Cut it. Because people will say as little as they can, particularly men. And so if you're looking at male dialogue, you say, how could I say that faster? Could I say that with one word? And what word would he use? But if it's somebody who's really into themselves and considers themselves to be very smart, often they'll go on and on and on and on. And I just pay attention to language. I really hate being interrupted because I grew up in this really loud house full of kids, and I never felt like I was heard. And I was constantly like, I have a problem, like, yeah. And I had this really big, loud voice when I was a kid. And because I just couldn't, no one would listen to me. So I noticed when other people are getting interrupted, and I notice when someone's interrupting me. And I think interruptions sometimes are good. One character interrupting another, and someone's trying to say something and they get really frustrated. I use a lot of that. Yeah.
Now I'm afraid to interrupt you.
I know. I was dealing with this very big celebrity author who came out to Australia, and I hung around with them a little bit. And from their PR team told someone that I know he hates to be interrupted. And so everyone was like, so would you like, just waiting? No, it's just, yeah, I don't know. When I'm having an argument with someone, when they interrupt me, I'm like, don't you interrupt me,
That's really interesting, because there is a scene in there exactly about interruptions. So clearly it's a thing. All right. So Crimson Lake is written / Troppo is written from Ted's first person point of view. I, this, I, that, and all that. And you really see it through predominantly Ted's experiences and Ted's eyes. When you're writing someone like Ted in first person, and you're figuring out scenes in your head, do you become Ted? I
love how you were like,
I feel like that kind of happens, but so I'm curious to know whether it does.
Oh, thank you. It's, whoever it is, if I'm the I character, it's usually as close as I can get to normal, because it can be, or who I am, because it can be exhausting to be someone who's very intense, like Amanda. I wouldn't do Amanda in first person for a whole book, because she's too intense and weird and fragmented, and her thoughts would be very short and this kind of stuff. So if it's an I character, it's that character in the book is as close as you'll get to me, thinking and feeling and opinions and that kind of thing. So I can just take a seat, and every now and then I have to remind myself, okay, I'm a man in his late 40s. I'm not me. So, when I'm thinking about, this character sees this television show, and I'm like, I would love to watch that. It's maths, but I go, hang on, no, I'm Ted, so he wouldn't.
Right.
And I change things. But for the Bennett Archer series, I was Frank Bennett in first person for all of that. And that's how I kind of felt at that time, like a sort of he's like a knockabout, easygoing, working class guy. He's just trying to do his job. That's kind of how I felt in my life. So it was the I is usually the easiest with me.
Yeah. So with the some of the characters have changed. The author character, so this isn't a spoiler, everyone. The author character is not an author in the television series. Were you surprised by that, and what's your take on why that occurred?
They said to me early on, we're changing the crime, and we just didn't feel that the Jake Scully crime was big and complex enough to sustain an 8-hour series, because it's a long time. It's a it's a long time. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of red herrings and that kind of thing. And I was fine with that. And I was happy enough with it. I mean, they were sort of explaining to me that he's from this big tech company, and they're trying out, energy resources. And I liked the idea of that, because I could see that big glassy room where they're doing the presentation, and, the rivers in the background and that kind of thing. I thought it really suited the narrative. So, I was happy enough with that. Jake Scully in Crimson Lake is the least interesting. I really wanted him to just be the sandpit that Ted and Amanda play in, because it's hard to do the victim, to create a lot of empathy for the victim in a crime novel, because they're dead usually, and all you've got left behind is their family. And so you've got to make the reader care about that victim by their family being really upset or not upset, and you're like, you're not upset enough, and then it becomes
One of the things that's very apparent in all of your novels is your deep knowledge of, slightly disturbingly, crime and police procedures and police, law enforcement frameworks, and murder, not just the actions involved in a murder, but the mindset of a criminal. How obviously there's a lot of research that goes into that. What kinds of things, like what kinds of contacts do you keep up in order to check that you are doing it authentically, writing it authentically?
I've just cultivated over the years a collection of mid-level police officers and homicide detectives, and I have a homicide detective in Los Angeles who's a very good friend of mine, a very valuable contact. I have one in New York. I have prison employee, people who work in prisons, and you just pick up these people along the way. And after about my third or fourth or fifth book, you can just tap on someone's shoulder and say, this is who I am, I'm an author, and they can Google you and they go, oh, okay, she is real, and then they want to get involved. People just want to get involved. They want to tell you what's going on. And it's funny, with police, you'll either find they just don't want to talk to you ever or tell you anything, or they just won't shut up. And it's like, I want to tell you about my best case ever. I met with a Sydney homicide detective. I'm sure I won't. I don't know if I should say who he is or not. But anyway, you probably know who he is. He's quite famous, which narrows it down. But
yes, got it.
The first time we had coffee together, we were there for like an hour and a half. And we just kept going, okay, I just want to tell you this one more story. and we go, okay, we really do have to go now. Okay, I just want to, but before we do, I just want to, and we did that for like another 45 minutes. Just
my God.
This reminds me of this thing. And it's just going on and on and on. And it turns out that he and I have a chainsaw murderer in common. He said, I know this guy. Yeah, he goes, I know this guy. And he was accused of chopping his girlfriend up with a chainsaw. And I went, hang on, I know that guy. He wrote to me. And I went, oh my God, we know the same guy. That's amazing. What a small world. I mean, how many chainsaw murderers are there?
Oh my God.
We both know the same one. Yeah. So
the way your mind works, but the way also you retain information, and you must note it down, have some kind of system of noting it down somewhere, because you have to actually use it again.
I'm just really interested in it. My husband is a huge baseball fan, and he sits there and he goes, oh, this baseballer, his last game, he didn't do that well because he had this injured elbow and blah, 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 and all this. And you think, you're a nerd, you're a baseball nerd. How do you remember all this stuff, all these numbers? Oh, you're a nerd. And then I sit there and I go, well, actually, for a charge like that, you're probably looking about this many years, and then you get probation, and you just add an extra, or the DNA, you can pick up DNA from teeth, but it's like this, and it's you're a nerd, you're a murder nerd. Yes.
Oh my God. So the way, I love the way you have laid it all out in your course, Anatomy of a Crime, How to Write About Murder. And we get so much incredible feedback on that course. I mean, I did the course and I learned so much. But also I was chatting to Danuka McKenzie, who wrote The Torrent. And, which was named one of the most anticipated books of 2022 or something. And she did your course, How to Write About Murder, and, got a lot out of it. But just for listeners who might be interested in doing that course, what's in it?
It's your toolbox. It's your starter kit of being able to write crime, really. So we tried to put together a chapter on everything that you would know from, crime scenes, how do they work, who's there, what do they do, all those nitty-gritty questions, and also some famous ones. And then there are activities all the way to, prisons. What is it like to be in prison? Here are some examples of what people have said. What is intake like? What are prison terms? And it's just crime, how to write a villain, how to write a hero. It's your toolbox, really. And I've heard such great things about that course over the years. And I didn't know Danuka had done it, but there have been a couple of crime authors who have come up who said, yeah, I did it, or I did it twice, and that kind of thing. And I just think that's so cool.
It's great because it's a toolbox, it's a blueprint, it's everything you need to know to write about murder, right from premeditation to the actual act of murder, different types of murder, to the police, to the investigation, to the trial. So very, very comprehensive. Like I said, I learned so much, it's ridiculous. But the other thing that you're known for is how prolific you are. I honestly don't know how you do it, Candice. So tell us what you are working on currently, or what I assume that you might be doing a variety of different books at different stages. So what's snapshot of now?
The first time they ever said to me, hey, Candice, do you think you could write 2 books at once? I was like, well, that's a little bit crazy. I'm not sure, but okay, yeah. It was because I never would say no at that stage. So I wrote Crimson Lake and Never Never with James Patterson at the same time. And then I went, actually, that's a good amount of busyness for me. So since then, I've sort of done, either 2 at a time or overlapping with each other. So at the moment, I am working on a novel, my own standalone novel. And I'm also working on an Audible exclusive. I have an Audible exclusive fictional podcast coming out in March.
Wow.
So they asked me to do another one. And so I was like, yeah, okay, cool. But I have almost finished the novel. So I'm just going to race to the end of that and put the fictional podcast on the back burner for the moment. And
so what's the fiction podcast thing on Audible called?
It's called Hunting Game. It's about a kidnapping. So a detective in New York is assigned to a kidnapping, and she's looking at the crime and sort of thinking, holy moly, I think my ex-husband did this. He's another police officer. And so she's got to try and investigate, but don't investigate too hard, push the investigation away from her husband, who has abducted this kid, and convince him to let the kid go before the investigation comes around and gets him. And it's so much fun because it's all audio and sound effects. So it's just fast as lightning and action-packed and twist, because it's 10 episodes, and every episode you got to end on that twisty kind of hook that's like up the stakes and up the stakes and up the stakes. I love that kind of thing.
Wow. So that is so cool.
That's right. Yeah. Fun.
So with so many books that you're writing and Audible originals and stuff like that, what's your ideas file look like? Like, do you just have a bunch that are waiting to be busted out as novels, or do you take each novel as it comes and kind of think, okay, what am I going to write this time?
I try not to flirt with other novels while I am married to a novel, but it sometimes happens. I just hear something, or I see a crime, or I watch a documentary, and then I fall in love with a concept. And so I try to think to myself, okay, I really love this right now. Like, for example, con men. I had a little con men obsession because I watched Love, Fraud, and then there was Dirty John and all that kind of thing. But I was writing The Chase, which is a prison. So I was like, how can I scoop my boyfriend into my marriage, type of thing, in that. And so I added a con man. My ideas, they're just constant, and I always have a book which is not inside my genre that I'm just writing in my head to write at night while I'm falling asleep, because I fall asleep.
What do you mean you're writing it in your head and you write at night? You're writing it in your head at night?
Yeah. Well, see, when I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of writing time. I would be able to write when I got home from school, but before, dinner time. And I had this little section. So when I would fall asleep at night, I would think about what I was going to write in that section of my day the next day. And I'd get it perfect, so that I could just spew it out. So I trained myself to go to sleep thinking about what am I going to write next? What am I going to write next? But if I do that in my current life, I'm thinking about work, and it's like, are the audiences going to like that? Have I done that in a book before? Blah, blah, blah. It gets very stressful. So I don't write like apocalyptic zombie fiction, but I would love to. And so in my head right now, I am writing this like end of the world zombie thing, but I just do it in my head at night while I'm falling asleep.
You're so weird.
I know. That's so weird. But I don't know how to relax. So that's
oh my God. All right. Well, yeah. Okay. I am actually keen to read that book, because I have no doubt it'll be really bizarre and no doubt very compelling. But okay, finally, what are your top 3 tips? Now, I've asked you your top 3 tips before. So I'm not going to ask you your top 3 tips about writing. I'm going to ask you your top 3 tips about longevity as an author, because, you've written so many books now, and you've gone way past, book 1, which is when I first met you.
Yeah.
What are your top 3 tips of longevity as an author?
Okay. Well, figure out as fast as you can how you work, because everybody's different. So I don't like to work in an office. I'm sitting in an office right now, in my office at home, but I rarely ever use this office. I like to work in cafes and busy places, and I like to do musical chairs. So I'll be in this cafe for a while, then I'll move to this one, then I'll go and be in the park, then I'll come home, and I figured that out after a couple of books. When I was writing a book and it wasn't working, and I was like, what is not working? It's because I was sitting here in an office. I needed to get out and get moving,
Right.
And I realized that I am not a writer who can just sit for an hour and write. I do like 20 minutes, get up, move around, go and do the washing up, come back, another 20 minutes, get up, walk the dog around the block, another 20 minutes, and so.
Wow.
So I know how I work. And that's useful because you can stop yourself from making mistakes and wasting time. Longevity as an author, be nice to everyone that you possibly can. I know that's a problematic piece of advice, but it's mainly just don't be a jerk. You don't have to be nice, but don't be a jerk to anyone in this industry ever, because your publicist's assistant today in 10 years is going to be like head of the company or something, or head of publicity or whatever it is. This is an industry where people move around and they move up a lot. And so, don't be a jerk. Just be open to doing different things, I suppose. I've written your gothic, Dexter-y sort of stuff, and I've written action thrillers, and I've written steamy noir type of things, and when you try, you scoop up different authors, like you scoop up different readers every time you do that, because the action people go, oh, I like action, what's she doing next? Oh, it's noir. Oh, I don't really read that, but I'll read her because I like the last one. And then you scoop up different types of readers, and then you'll group them all together.
I love that. That's excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Crimson Lake / Troppo, the TV series is out now. Go read the book, go watch the television show, go buy Candice's books, because it's always an incredible experience. Thank you so much for your time today, Candice.
Thank you. My pleasure.